The chamber smelled like old metal and recycled air, sterile, polished, and slightly sweet, like someone had tried to disinfect fear and failed. Ambassador Mara Vance stood alone at the center ring, boots planted on a floor that pretended to be marble but behaved like composite. Above her, light fell from a ceiling so high it looked like the inside of a cathedral built by accountants. Around her, tiered seats rose in a perfect circle, thousands of delegates wrapped in silk, shell, fur, scales, mist suits and ceremonial armor that had never seen grit. Every species had brought their flags. Every species had brought their cameras. The Galactic Council-like theater. It made them feel like gravity belonged to them. A chime rang, 3 notes, then silence. The council's speaker floated forward on a dais, suspended by an anti-grav harness that hummed softly as it kept his body aloft. His face was narrow and lacquered, his eyes filmed with a protective membrane that blinked sideways. He wore a sash bearing the council seal, a star enclosed by a chain. Mara watched his mouth-shaped words as the translator beads in her collar warmed and vibrated faintly against her skin. "Terran Ambassador," the speaker said, "you are here to receive the council's final resolution." A ripple went through the chamber. Not cheers. Not jeers. Something worse, anticipation. Like a crowd watching a rope tighten. Mara didn't look up at the tiers. She didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her measure the room. Instead, she clicked a stylus against her palm and opened her pad. The sound was small in the vastness, but it carried. Everything carried in a room built for public punishment. "Proceed," she said. A few delegates tilted their heads. Some bristled. A being made entirely of mist contracted, as if offended that a solid creature could speak so plainly. The speaker extended a scroll, an actual scroll, luminous and ceremonial. It hovered in front of him, projected in layers of text and seal stamps that shimmered like oil. "By authority vested in this council by the Charter of Concord," he announced, voice amplified just enough to make it impossible to ignore. "The Terran polity is hereby issued an ultimatum, effective immediately." Mara's stylus paused. On the upper tiers, a delegate with jointed, insectal hands leaned toward another and whispered. The translator in Mara's collar filtered it out, but she caught fragments, primitive, stubborn, finally. The speaker continued, savoring each clause like a judge reading a sentence. Article 1. All Terran extrastellar colonies beyond the sole defensive perimeter shall be surrendered to Council administration within 72 standard hours. Mara wrote, "They want our people as hostages." Article 2. The Terran Empire shall dismantle all kinetic-based strategic platforms, mass drivers, rail batteries, rotary cannon satellites, and chemical propellant weapon caches, deemed destabilizing to galactic peace. Mara wrote, "They want our teeth." Article 3. The Terran fleet will submit to Council inspection and oversight. All warp-capable hulls shall transmit location pings every 9 minutes and provide access to onboard command systems for compliance auditing. Mara wrote, "They want our eyes and hands." The speaker raised his arms like a priest concluding prayer. "Failure to comply," he said, "will result in unified enforcement action. Terran trade rights will be revoked. Jump lanes under Council jurisdiction will be closed to Terran traffic. A blockade will be established. If necessary." He paused, and the room leaned with him. "The Terran home system will be quarantined until compliance is achieved." The word quarantine rolled out smooth and clinical, like it had never strangled anyone before. Mara lifted her eyes at last, not to the crowd, but to the speaker. "Are we done?" she asked softly. The speaker blinked. "You will respond." "I will," Mara said. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. It didn't plead. It landed in the chamber like a weight. A murmur spread. The council liked humans, in a distant way. Humans were good for entertainment. Loud. Emotional. Dramatic. They had expected tears, anger, negotiations. Mara tapped her stylus once more, as if checking ink in a pen. "Before I respond," she said, "clarification." The speaker's eyes narrowed. "Clarification is granted." Mara held up her pad so the scrolling ultimatum text reflected faintly off her fingers. Is this document binding, or ceremonial? For 2 heartbeats, the chamber didn't understand the question. Then laughter broke out. Not from everyone, some species didn't laugh. They hissed, or clicked, or emitted color. But enough delegates found it hilarious that a sound like a storm filled the room. Mara waited. She had seen laughter like this before, on old footage in war colleges, men in suits laughing at maps. The kind of laugh that said, "We've already decided you're finished. Now entertain us while we do paperwork." The speaker let the laughter run longer than necessary. When it finally subsided, he smiled as if indulging a child. "It is binding," he said. "It is law." Mara nodded once, like someone accepting weather. "Then my response," she said, "will also be binding." The speaker's smile thinned. "You may speak." Mara didn't deliver a speech. She didn't posture. She simply reached into her inner jacket and placed a small object on the floor. A coin. Old, worn, metallic. Terran currency from before the Empire unified its mints. A relic. Several delegates leaned forward, intrigued. The council loved relics. It made them feel timeless. Mara flicked the coin with her thumb. It spun, caught the light, and fell flat with a sharp, clean ping. Heads. She looked up again. "The Terran Empire acknowledges receipt," she said. "We do not accept terms. We will not comply. Your 72-hour deadline is noted." A hiss from the Terrans. Outrage. Disbelief. The speaker's harness hummed louder as his body lifted half a meter, an instinctive elevation like a cobra rising. "Ambassador," he snapped, "do you understand what you are refusing?" Mara's mouth twitched. Not a smile, something colder. "I understand," she said. "You've issued an ultimatum. That's useful. Humans appreciate clarity." "Clarity?" A delegate barked, an avian creature with scarlet plumage. "You appreciate extinction?" Mara turned her head slightly toward the sound without granting it full attention. "Extinction?" she repeated, as if tasting the word. Her collar translator buzzed gently, and with it came a faint tone, an encrypted ping from her own calm bead buried in the fabric. A pulse that meant, all stations aligned. She kept her face still. The speaker recovered enough composure to gesture, and the chamber's central hollow flared. A star map appeared, with Sol highlighted in a bright, accusing red. "Quarantine," the speaker said, voice sharpening with satisfaction, "will isolate your world. Your colonies will starve. Your fleets will be trapped. Your people will adapt," Mara interrupted. Silence fell again, sharper than the first. Mara set her pad down and clasped her hands behind her back, posture relaxed in a way that made military observers in the back rows exchange glances. Relaxed meant prepared. "You assume," she said, "that access is leverage." "It is," the speaker insisted. Mara's eyes were steady. "Access is convenience. Leverage is when you can remove something we can't replace." The speaker's membrane blinked sideways twice, a sign of irritation. "You are making threats," he said, as if offended by the concept. "No," Mara said. "I'm describing the difference between your language and ours." A delegate on the second tier leaned forward. "Then what is your response, Terran? War?" Mara exhaled softly through her nose. "War?" she echoed, and for the first time, the room heard something like amusement. "No. War is loud. War is emotional. War is expensive." She tilted her head, like someone considering a menu. "What you've done," she said, "is hand us your escalation ladder. With a timetable." The speaker's jaw tightened. "And?" Mara looked at the coin on the floor. The small, mundane thing in the center of alien grandeur. Heads staring up. "And humans," she said, "are very good at timetables." On her collar, another faint encrypted pulse, GateNet ready. Mara's face remained neutral, but inside her chest, her heartbeat slowed, not from fear, but from the relief of a plan reaching its final checkpoint. A wave of uneasy movement passed through the chamber. Delegates sensed something shifting, not in words, but in the quiet certainty behind them. The speaker leaned forward. "This is your final chance to reconsider." Mara lifted her gaze to the tears at last, letting them see her eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't pleading. They were the eyes of someone reading a receipt. "We have reconsidered," she said. "For 23 years. The speaker raised a hand to signal security, ceremonial guards with polished weapons that had never been fired in anger. Mara didn't flinch. She simply added conversationally, "By the way, your translators are excellent. Very professional. The only flaw is they assume honesty." The speaker froze. "What are you implying?" Mara's calm bead pulsed a final time, strike back initiated. She looked at the speaker, and her voice softened, almost kind. "I'm implying," she said, "that while you were reading your ultimatum, you were also declaring your dependencies." A low tremor ran through the chamber lights, so slight most delegates missed it. But Mara felt it in the floor. A vibration like a distant door closing. Somewhere, far beyond this theater, jump lanes began to blink from green to gray. The speaker opened his mouth, and every hollow in the room flickered, stuttered, then went blank. For the first time in the Galactic Council's recorded history, the chamber had no script to follow. Mara's pad chimed quietly in her hand, a single new line of text from Earth Command. Traffic frozen. Logistics AI collapsed. Waiting for your word. Mara didn't smile. She simply picked up the coin, slid it back into her pocket, and said to the suddenly silent council, "Now." And the galaxy held its breath. The first thing the council did when the chamber went dark was what it always did when frightened: look for someone to blame. The speaker's harness whined as it fought for stability, tiny corrective pulses keeping him afloat. Without the hollow displays, his silhouette looked smaller, less divine. More like a bureaucrat dangling on a machine. "Restore the feed," he snapped at the guards. The guards, gleaming, ceremonial, raised their weapons in unison, unsure whether the enemy was the human in the center ring, or the invisible failure crawling through their systems. Their helmets reflected nothing now. No strategic overlays. No reassuring green icons. Ambassador Mara Vance didn't move. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, gaze lowered as if listening for distant thunder. In the upper tiers, delegates made their native alarm sounds. A reptilian block hissed, the avians clacked beaks, a gelatinous representative rippled into a defensive sphere. One species began to emit pheromones that hit Mara's translator as panic, high concentration. A council technician ran onto the speaker's dais, tendrils trembling. "We've lost chamber network, sir. Not local failure. It's upstream. The council net itself is..." Mara spoke into the chaos with the calm of someone calling a bingo number. "Your trade lanes are going to freeze in 60 seconds. Every head turned toward her. The speaker's eyes narrowed until the membranes looked like knives. "You did this." Mara's mouth barely moved. "No. You did this. I'm just punctual." A few delegates barked laughter, reflexively, humor as armor, but it died immediately when the lights overhead flickered again, this time longer, and the emergency strips along the floor pulsed red. The translator bead at Mara's collar warmed as it fought through interfering signals. It managed 2 words from a nearby delegate: jump lanes. Then, somewhere beyond the chamber, a sound rolled through the station, deep, metallic, like a distant cargo door slamming shut. Mara tipped her head. "That's the first gate." The speaker thrust a hand forward. "Seize her." Guards stepped off the dais, boots striking in synchronized rhythm. They moved as if they'd rehearsed this on paper. Mara watched them approach with the detached curiosity of a person watching a slow-motion accident. When the guards reached the center ring, their weapons beeped, soft, confused sounds. Their tactical receivers were dead. Their comms were dead. Their locks refused to confirm targets. One guard tapped his rifle's side panel, then looked at the other with a tilt that translated to "this shouldn't happen." Mara's eyes slid to him. Your weapons require Council authentication, she said. Your authentication requires your network. Your network requires your logistics AI. Your logistics AI is currently having a very bad day. The guard's grip tightened. His rifle was suddenly just weight and ritual. The chamber air shifted, and with it came a cold, sterile voice from the ceiling speakers, a backup analog circuit that hadn't been used in decades. Attention, Council GateNet traffic control status, unknown. Routing failsafe engaged. All jump clearances suspended until further notice. A second of stunned silence. Then the chamber erupted. Delegates stood, shouted, hissed, flared colors. Some demanded emergency sessions. Some demanded war. Some demanded to know why the Terran was still breathing. Mara didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Panic made a room loud, certainty made it listen. She lifted her pad and spoke like a clerk reading a shipping manifest. Council lanes are controlled by your Logistics Authority AI. It assigns fuel, priority, schedules, safe corridors. Without it, your jump network locks itself. Safety protocol. No one moves because no one can confirm who's moving. A delegate with a crystalline face leaned forward. You hacked us. Mara's eyes moved to it. You outsourced your empire to a program. We simply reminded the program that it could say no. The speaker's harness bobbed as he stabbed his finger toward her. Restore our systems or you will be executed for sabotage. Mara blinked slowly. Executed? The words sounded quaint in her mouth. Like a museum exhibit. She tilted her head slightly. That's your move? Threaten a Terran ambassador in a room full of witnesses, while your entire logistical backbone is collapsing? Her voice remained polite. I'd recommend against adding hostage-taking to your list of poor decisions. A ripple of unease ran through the council. Not because they cared about her life, because they cared about consequences. Mara tapped her pad once. A private channel opened in her ear, a whisper only she could hear. Vance, came the voice of Admiral Rowan Pike from Earth Command, low, gravelly, the kind of voice that sounded like it had chewed through too many sleepless nights and come out sharper. Phase 1 confirmed. GateNet is frozen across Council jurisdiction. Their routing AI is locked into failsafe. We have 90 minutes before they figure out how to bypass it with manual clearances. Mara didn't respond aloud. She just inhaled, letting the chaos in the chamber wash around her while her mind worked like a metronome. Phase 2? She murmured softly, so only her collar mic caught it. Already in motion, Pike answered. Merchant hulls are moving under pre-filed Terran humanitarian exceptions. And a pause, almost a grin in his tone. Their enforcement fleets? They're thirsty. Fuel allocations just mysteriously rerouted to agricultural convoys. Mara's lips twitched. Dark humor, dry and mean. Starving warships so grain can travel. That's poetic. It's accounting, Pike corrected. War as ledger. We're simply balancing the books. Mara looked up at the speaker again, who was still shouting orders into dead calms like a man yelling at a grave. She waited until his eyes found her. Ambassador, he hissed, you will reverse this. Mara lowered her pad. You issued an ultimatum, she said. You assumed fear. You used the word quarantine like it was a polite administrative measure. She stepped closer to the dais, slow enough that no one could claim she lunged. Guards shifted nervously, suddenly unsure of their authority without their network telling them they had it. Do you know what quarantine means to humans? She asked. The speaker sneered. Isolation. Containment. Mara's voice softened, almost educational. It means you've decided we're contagious. That our existence is a disease. Humans don't negotiate with extermination dressed as policy. A delegate shouted from above. You're overreacting. Mara glanced up, letting the room see her eyes again. No, she said. We're reacting proportionally. We're just doing it quietly. Another alarm sounded, different, more urgent. The backup speaker crackled. Attention, Council Logistics Authority AI, non-responsive. Automated resupply scheduling, suspended. Estimated time to manual restoration, 56 hours. 56 hours. The number hit the chamber like a weapon. Because every fleet captain in the Council's territory knew what that meant. 2 days without reliable fuel allocation, without food routing, without ammunition distribution. 2 days of ships drifting in lanes, waiting for clearances that would never come. 2 days of piracy, panic, and collapse. A high-ranking delegate in gold armor stood abruptly, one of the Council's Enforcement Committee species, famous for brutality behind law. Its voice boomed unfiltered. This is an act of war. Mara nodded once. It's an act of refusal. Refusal? It roared. You paralyze our civilization. Mara's tone remained measured. You tried to paralyze ours, permanently. We simply removed your ability to do it. The speaker slammed a hand on his dais. You will be held accountable. The Council will unite. We will blockade Sol ourselves. We will. A technician stumbled back onto the dais, tendrils flailing. His voice cracked. Sir, Enforcement Fleet 12 just reported. No response from their fuel tenders. Their convoy routing lists have changed. They're being instructed to stand down and await agricultural priority deliveries. The gold-armored delegate turned slowly, as if betrayed by air itself. That is impossible. Our fleet. Mara's voice cut through like a scalpel. Your fleet isn't a fleet, she said. It's a mobile consumer of supplies. Without supplies, it's a very expensive sculpture. A few delegates made choking sounds, laughter again, involuntary, horrified. Dark humor was contagious when the truth was cruel enough. Mara took one more step, close enough that the speaker could see the faint exhaustion in the lines around her eyes. This is what you never understood, she said quietly. You thought power was the ability to hit someone. Humans learned long ago that power is the ability to decide who eats, who moves, who communicates. Her pad chimed again in her hand. Another message from Pike, short and brutal. Phase 2 complete. Council resupply priorities rewritten. Enforcement fleets grounded without a shot. Mara didn't show it to them. She didn't need to. The chamber was already beginning to fracture. Delegates whispering to their aides, eyes darting, alliances dissolving in real time. The speaker's voice dropped to a hiss meant only for her. You think this makes you strong? Mara met his gaze. No, she said. It makes us hard to kill. The speaker's membranes blinked sideways in anger. We can still vote. We can still declare you outlaw. We can still. Mara leaned in just enough that her words didn't need amplification. You can still do paperwork, she said. Congratulations. It's all you have left. Then she straightened, turned slightly to face the chamber, and spoke loud enough for every translator still functioning to catch. The Terran Empire has not fired on your worlds, she said. We have not bombed your cities. We have not targeted your civilians. We have done something far more merciful. She paused, letting the silence sharpen. We have taken your leverage away, she said. So you can stop pretending your ultimatum was peace. And in that moment, as the Council realized the terrible elegance of what humans had done, how clean, how disciplined, how devastating, Mara understood the real strike back wasn't the frozen gates. It was the humiliation. Because the galaxy had just learned that the Terran Empire could dismantle an interstellar superpower without raising its voice. And the next move would decide whether the Council collapsed, or screamed loud enough to drag everyone into the fire. The Council chamber did not adjourn. It couldn't. Adjournment required quorum, order, and functioning procedure, 3 things that evaporated the moment delegates realized the Terran Empire had not merely countered the ultimatum, but inverted it. What followed was not debate. It was triage. Mara Vance stood off to one side now, no longer the center of attention but the gravity well around which everything bent. Delegates clustered in whispered knots, translators buzzing hot as multiple languages overlapped. Species that had once postured as equals now leaned close to aides, eyes darting toward the exits, toward Mara, toward the darkened holos that still refused to come back online. Fear, Mara thought, was rarely loud at first. It started as calculation. A crystalline delegate approached her cautiously, facets dimmed to a neutral hue. "Ambassador Vance," it said, voice carefully modulated. "You must understand, the Council did not intend annihilation. The ultimatum was a corrective measure." Mara didn't turn fully toward it. She kept her eyes on the speaker, who was locked in a silent argument with two senior legalists, their tendrils and hands moving in sharp, clipped gestures. "A corrective measure," Mara repeated. "So was every colonial decree in human history. They were always temporary. Until they weren't." The crystalline being hesitated. "You have leverage now. Consider moderation." Mara finally looked at it. "Moderation is what we're doing. If we weren't moderating, you wouldn't be standing here asking for it." The being's facets flickered, a sign of distress. It withdrew without another word. Across the chamber, a different group moved with more urgency. Representatives from mid-tier trade species, shipping consortiums, fuel brokers, food distributors, were already abandoning the speaker's side. Their concern was not ideology. It was survival. One of them, a thick-bodied molluscud with metallic implants along its mantle, approached Mara with surprising boldness. "Our convoys are stalled," it said bluntly. "Your adjustments are strangling commerce. This benefits no one." Mara nodded. "Commerce is a system. Systems obey rules. Your rules were written by the Council. And now?" it pressed. "And now," Mara said, "you're discovering what happens when a system built for control loses trust." The molluscud's implants pulsed. "If we recognize Terran transit authority on specific lanes, temporarily, could your empire prioritize essential goods?" Mara studied it for a long moment. "Not hostile. Not desperate. Rational. Send your proposal through back channels," she said. "Humanitarian priority first. No weapons. No enforcement assets." The molluscud inclined its massive head. "Agreed." As it withdrew, Mara's calm beat pulsed again. "Vance," Admiral Pike said quietly, "we're seeing fractures. Trade blocs are already rerouting around Council authority. Some are requesting Terran escrow guarantees." Mara allowed herself a slow exhale. "That was faster than projected." "They trust logistics," Pike replied. "They've just seen who actually understands it." Mara's gaze flicked back to the speaker. He was losing the room. The legalists around him were no longer arguing strategy. They were arguing liability. Who signed what? Who authorized which clause? Who could plausibly claim ignorance when the history records were reviewed? History always arrived eventually. The speaker finally turned back toward Mara, his face tight, membranes fluttering with suppressed rage. "You have destabilized the Council," he said. "You think they will thank you for this?" Mara stepped closer, voice low. "No. They'll thank us for what comes next." "And what is that?" he demanded. "An off-ramp," she said. "Something you didn't give us." The speaker's eyes narrowed. "You presume we want one." Mara's expression hardened, not angry, but final. "You don't matter anymore." "That's not an insult. It's an update." That landed. Around them, the chamber's noise shifted pitch, not panic now, but bargaining. Delegates were making private calls, cutting side deals, testing new loyalties. The Council as a unified entity was already a memory. A sudden alert cut through the noise, this one visual. Emergency holos flickered back to life in fragments, showing a rotating series of live feeds. Stranded fleets. Massive alien warships drifting in orderly lines near jump points, engines cold, running on reserve power. Crews clustered around consoles, captains arguing with quartermasters, supply officers staring at fuel readouts that no longer updated. The chamber fell quiet as delegates saw their own assets, helpless and very much alive. Mara recognized the tactic immediately. Pike had warned her this might happen. The Council was attempting to weaponize visibility, to provoke outrage, fear, a rally. The speaker seized the moment. "Behold," he declared, "the consequences of Terran aggression. Our fleets immobilized. Our security compromised. This is the face of coercion." Mara didn't look away from the hollow. "No," she said calmly. "That's the face of dependency." She raised her voice slightly, not a shout, but enough to carry. "Those crews are safe," she continued. "They have oxygen. They have food. They are not under fire. They are exactly where they were ordered to be, waiting for a system that failed them." A murmur spread. Some delegates looked relieved. Others looked furious that she was right. The speaker snapped. "You expect us to accept Terran terms now?" Mara turned slowly. "You don't get to frame it that way. This isn't about accepting our terms. This is about abandoning yours." She tapped her pad, projecting a simple document into the air between them. No seals. No chains. Just text. "Provisional de-escalation framework," she said. "Immediate suspension of the ultimatum. Mutual recognition of sovereign logistics control. Neutral trade corridors administered by Terran oversight until redundancy is restored." The speaker recoiled. "Oversight? You replace us?" Mara shook her head. "We stabilize you. There's a difference." "And if we refuse?" a delegate shouted from the upper tiers. Mara didn't answer immediately. She let the silence do the work. Then softly, "Then nothing changes. Your fleets remain stationary. Your lanes remain closed. Your members continue to defect one by one." She looked up, meeting eyes across species and centuries. "We are not forcing compliance," she said. "We are offering gravity. Step into it, or keep floating until you starve." That broke something. A senior delegate, one of the Council's founding species, rose slowly, joints creaking. Its voice was old, steady, and carried the weight of memory. "The ultimatum," it said, "was a mistake." The speaker whirled. "You cannot." "It was a mistake," the elder repeated. "And mistakes require correction." The chamber erupted again, but this time the sound was different, less fear, more momentum. Votes were called. Not formally. Informally. Quiet nods. Private confirmations. One by one, representatives withdrew support from the ultimatum. The speaker's harness lowered an inch. Mara watched it all with the weary focus of someone who had spent years preparing for a moment she hoped would never come. Her comm beat pulsed one last time. "Vance," Pike said. "We're at the threshold. Council unity is below critical mass. Next phase is yours." Mara closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. "Understood," she said. She stepped forward into the center ring once more, drawing every gaze. "The Terran Empire did not seek this confrontation," she said evenly. "But we will finish it responsibly." She let her eyes sweep the chamber. "You tried to rule through ultimatum. We rule through continuity. Decide which future you prefer." Then she stepped back, and waited. And as the galaxy stood on the edge of a new order, she allowed herself one private thought, sharp with dark humor. They wanted a deadline. Now they're negotiating with time. If you've made it this far, you're already part of this fight. Subscribe to Stand With Us, share this story with someone who understands strategy, and comment where you're watching from, because history is written by those who pay attention, and you're one of them. The first vote to abandon the ultimatum did not come with applause. It came with silence, the heavy, irrevocable kind that settles when an institution realizes it has crossed a line it can't walk back from. Mara Vance felt it before she saw it. A shift in posture. A change in breathing. The way delegates stopped glancing at the speaker and started glancing at each other, calculating exits rather than victories. The speaker remained suspended above the dais, but his height no longer meant authority. It only meant exposure. "You are dismantling order," he said hoarsely, voice amplified but no longer commanding. "This council has preserved peace for centuries." Mara looked at him the way a physician looks at a patient who refuses a diagnosis. "You preserved quiet," she said. Peace requires consent. A legalist stepped forward, one of the council's architects, its hands trembling not from fear, but from clarity. The ultimatum was passed under Emergency Clause 79. It said carefully. That clause requires demonstrable existential threat. Mara's eyebrow lifted a fraction. And the Terran Empire, the legalist continued, was not an existential threat until the ultimatum made it one. The words rippled outward, translated into a dozen forms of comprehension. You could almost hear centuries of precedent cracking. The speaker's membranes fluttered wildly. You will not rewrite law because a human embarrassed you. Mara's voice cut in, calm and surgical. You rewrote law when it suited you. We're just holding the pen now. Across the chamber, a new hollow feed flickered to life, this one not forced by the council, but requested. A live broadcast from the Persis corridor. A Terran convoy slid through the void in disciplined silence. Merchant hulls, hospital ships, fuel tenders. No warships in the lead. No banners. Just orderly movement. Then the camera panned. Alien vessels, council-owned, stranded, received docking clamps. Human crews transferred fuel. Medical teams crossed hulls. Supplies moved crate by crate, logged and accounted for. No speeches. No grandstanding. Just work. A delegate whispered. They're resupplying us. Mara nodded. Humanitarian priority, she said. As promised. Another delegate snarled. So we're to be grateful to our captors? Mara's eyes hardened. Captors don't give you options. We're giving you one. The speaker slammed his hand on the dais again, but the sound rang hollow. This is extortion. Mara tilted her head. Extortion threatens harm. We prevented it. A murmur of assent followed. Not loud. Not dramatic. But decisive. One by one, delegates disengaged their support from the speaker's authority. Votes retracted. Mandates suspended. Emergency powers quietly nullified. The Galactic Council, an entity that had believed itself eternal, was collapsing not in fire, but in procedure. Mara's calm beat pulsed. Vance, Admiral Pike said, voice steady. We're seeing full compliance on neutral corridor adoption. Trade is stabilizing under Terran escrow. Council enforcement fleets are standing down voluntarily. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. Not relief. Responsibility. Understood, she replied. Maintain posture. No provocations. Already ordered, Pike said. Then, after a pause, you did good. Mara didn't respond to that. The speaker sagged in his harness, deflated. You think this ends with you in control? He said bitterly. Empires fall. Yes, Mara agreed. That's why we don't build ours on fear. She stepped forward, stopping just short of the dais. Close enough now that he could see the fine scars along her knuckles, old, unremarkable, human. The Terran Empire isn't here to replace the Council, she said. We're here to end the illusion that centralized coercion equals stability. The speaker's voice cracked. So what happens to us? Mara considered him. Truly considered him. You'll exist, she said. Just not above consequences. A final vote was called, not to dissolve the Council, but to suspend its enforcement authority indefinitely. A procedural death, clean and undeniable. The result displayed on the emergency hollow in stark numbers. The speaker stared at it, motionless. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the elder delegate, the one who had first called the ultimatum a mistake, inclined its head toward Mara. The Terran Empire, it said, will oversee interim trade and transit governance. Mara corrected gently. Coordinate. Not oversee. The elder paused, then nodded. Coordinate, it repeated. That word mattered. As delegates began to depart, some quietly, some in visible shock, Mara remained in the chamber, watching an era end not with explosions, but with paperwork being rendered meaningless. The last to leave was the speaker. As he passed her, his voice dropped low. You've humiliated us. Mara didn't look at him. No, she said. You humiliated yourselves. We just documented it. When the chamber was finally empty, the lights dimmed to stand by. The silence was profound. Mara exhaled slowly. Her pad chimed with one final message from Earth Command, stamped and archived. Status: Galactic Council enforcement neutralized. Terran Empire recognized as primary trade stabilizer. She read it once, then locked the screen. Outside the station, stars burned with the same indifference they always had. Empires rose and fell beneath them. Only preparation endured. As Mara walked toward the exit, she allowed herself one last thought, not triumphant, not bitter. They thought an ultimatum would end us. Instead, it taught the galaxy how humans respond when pushed to the edge. Not with fury. Not with spectacle. But with patience, precision, and the quiet certainty that once the line is crossed, there is no going back.